welcome. It feels like things are tilted toward the Buddha's right, the side that I can't see, so I'm feeling like, if you guys want to move, if you're feeling like you want to adjust your seats, move into a place where you can see better, please feel free to do that. We're a little wobbly. I'm a little wobbly today. I'm recovering from something. I'm much better. Oh my goodness! But I could hear some coughing and crackles. There's something going around. I was thinking it was allergies. I don't think it's allergies. So take care of yourselves. I wanted to make just a couple of quick announcements. One, you may have noticed that we didn't light any incense today. We were carrying Esho, wherever Esho is, was carrying incense, but did not light it. A week from yesterday, next Saturday, the 4th, Buddha-e, along with Sado Martin, Sangha, Zen West, Empty Field, and then also with Mark Uno, who's a Jodo Shinshu priest and a professor at the U of O. We're hosting a special visitor, Mushi Makita Sensei, who is the leading teacher at the East Bay Meditation. I think it's Insight Meditation Center. She's in the Insight Meditation tradition. Very, very deep practitioner, done huge amounts of work with social justice issues, with diversity and equity issues, with the Buddha Dharma, she's been teaching recently on the divine abodes, the Brahma Viharas, and she's going to be here next Saturday teaching about like grief and distress and how to practice in these kind of heart-wrenching times. Pretty powerful topic. That's 10 a.m. on Saturday. Anyway, she has, because of multiple chemical sensitivities, we are an incense-free temple this week. And I say that because I know for some of us, one of the things that we love to do is to come and offer a stick of incense. Don't do that this week. Come and bow. Come and sit, but don't light up. At least not here. Okay. Also, I will be skedaddling right after assembly. So if you need to catch me, I've got practice discussion, and while Hojo-san's still away, I'll be offering Sanzen on Tuesday morning. But I will be skedaddling right after. Okay, settling in. So I want to truly begin today with a particular question. It is a very particular question. It's a poem entitled Question, in fact. But although it's a particular and very specific question, I think it gets to the core of something that is true of all questions. All questions insofar as they are true questions. So this is a poem by an American poet named May Swenson called Question. Body, my house, my horse, my hound, what will I do when you are fallen? Where will I sleep? How will I ride? What will I hunt? Where can I go without my mount, all eager and quick? How will I know in thicket ahead is danger or treasure when body, my good, bright dog, is dead? How will it be to lie in the sky without roof or door and wind for an eye, with cloud for shift? Where will I hide? I'm going to read that just one more time. Body, my house, my horse, my hound, what will I do when you are fallen? Where will I sleep? How will I ride? What will I hunt? Where can I go without my mount, all eager and quick? How will I know in thicket ahead is danger or treasure when body, my good, bright dog, is dead? How will it be to lie in the sky without roof or door and wind for an eye, with cloud for shift? How will I ride? How will I hide? May Swenson's question is about the self, about what it really is to be a self in this embodied form that is the only self I know. What really am I? Her question is about the vulnerability of this self thing. It's about life and death, about our relationship to our body, the most intimate relationship there is. But more deeply, I think it's about our relationship to what we think we are, what we think our body is, what we think is the truth of the self, a truth that can at any moment, as I think we all know, but we all continuously forget, a truth that can at any moment disappear. With cloud for shift. Shift is like a fancy word for clothes, but it's also an interesting word choice. With cloud for shift, only the clouds are my clothes. How will I hide? Total vulnerability, the vulnerability of the self. That's what this question gets down to. And I think the question it gets down to is what every question, if it's really a true question, if it's really my question, I think it's what every question gets down to, this way that we are always on the line. We are always with cloud as our shift, nowhere to hide. Another way to say this that I hope I can kind of cash out in the course of this Dharma talk, another way to say all of this is to say that every true question, if it's really my question, it's really your question, every true question is absolutely desperate for an answer. Now, I think we tend to lose that point, that questions are desperate for answers, even here in the Zen school, where we pride ourselves on being people of the question, where we talk about the way as the question, and we have a sense of just how important the question is. I think we sometimes lose a sense of the desperation for an answer. So, just to kind of play this out a little bit, it's my understanding, I know this just from reading, not from actual experience, it's my understanding that in the Korean Zen school, a very common starting point for practice is the simplest form of the question, what is this? That's a kind of starting place, kind of like I'm familiar with Mu, with the question of does a dog have Buddha nature, how we might be more familiar in Soto with that as a starting point from the Rinzai tradition. But what is this? And apparently that form of the question, what is this? The earliest instance of it goes back to the sixth ancestor, to Huineng, to the Platform Sutra. This is my little display item. I'm holding up the book. In the Platform Sutra, we hear, and this is not the translation, this is Red Pine's copy of it, so this is a slightly different translation that's a little bit more reader-friendly, I think. So Wei Zhang, who was one of the key disciples, I gather, for Huineng, the sixth ancestor, Wei Zhang entered the room and bowed to Huineng. Huineng asked, "Where do you come from?" So this is at the beginning of this novice's training. "Where do you come from?" "I come from Mount Sung," replied Wei Zhang. Huineng asks, "What is this, and how did it get here?" Wei Zhang could not answer and remained speechless. He practiced for many years until he understood. He went to see Huineng to tell him about his breakthrough. Huineng said, "What is this?" Wei Zhang replied, "To say it is like something is not to the point, but still it can be cultivated. Still it can be cultivated. What is this? To say what it's like is not the point, but still it can be cultivated." So this is how Martine Batchelor glosses this case between Huineng and Wei Zhang. She says, "This is a practice of questioning, not of answering. We are trying to develop a sensation of openness, of wonderment. As we throw out the question, what is this? We are opening ourselves to the moment." She goes on, "There is no place we can rest. We are letting go of our need for knowledge and security, and our body and mind themselves become the question. You are giving yourself over entirely to the question. It is like diving into a pool, she writes. The whole body is engaged in the act, and the whole body and mind are refreshed. You are trying to develop a sensation of questioning and an inquiry that brings about the sense of bewilderment you feel when you have lost something. You are going somewhere, you put your hand in your pocket to grab your car keys, they aren't there. You check this corner and that corner of the pocket again and again, and there is nothing. For a moment, before you try to remember where you've left them, she writes, you are totally perplexed. You have no idea what might have happened. This is very similar to the sensation you are trying to develop in Zen questioning. Okay. So Martine Batchelor is describing what is this, that cultivating of that question, heart of Zen practice, she's saying. She's describing it as this opening ourselves to the moment, right? Living in that space of what? What is the question? That kind of open-ended space. Rilke, some of you may be familiar with the formulation that he has of this phenomenon from in Letters to a Young Poet of living the question, really inhabiting it. There's another teaching story in our tradition that also kind of describes this, has been used, very common, very famous. We've talked about it in this hall many times, I think, from the Book of Serenity, 12th century collection of 100 koans. Dizang asked Fayan, where are you going from here? Fayan said, I'm on a pilgrimage. Dizang asks, what sort of thing is pilgrimage? Fayan, I don't know. Dizang, not knowing is most intimate. Some of us heard that phrasing before. Not knowing is most intimate. So that asking a question is about intimacy, about meeting the world. What is this? I love that image that Martine Batchelor uses for this, right? You know, you put in your hand in your pocket, where are my car keys? And that moment of blankness, right? I'm putting my hand on my hip. I don't have a pocket in my robe, alas. But that feeling, right? Blankness. What is this? As a intimacy, right? I think this is, I'm looking around, is this kind of a familiar formulation for many of us, right? This kind of meeting the world. I think this is beautiful. And as a description of question, I think it's incomplete. I think we get kind of, I've been thinking about this as like a kind of cozy sense of intimacy, of like, oh, just meet the world, opening to the moment, this kind of curious, fresh beginner's mind. Nothing wrong with this, but I think it's kind of, not to throw shade on Brene Brown, but it's kind of Brene Brownified. It's kind of a straightforward concept, I think, in our world. I'm a mindfulness instructor, some of you know. This is like mindfulness 101. Just meet the world with curiosity, non-judgment. Just greet what is. Let your scripts go. Let the narratives go. I think about this in my family of origin all the time, the way that now there's just the 3 siblings, the way we hold each other to our narratives, how hard it is to be a new person in your family of origin. Can we just meet each other? What is this? What are you? Not like, what are you? But, you know, what? Right? Really me. And I think that that's something that is a very it's not easy. I'm not saying that this fresh, open curiosity is easy. But I think the concept of it is easy. It's become easy. It's become straightforward. It's not too challenging. And, you know, there's something about questions that I think shouldn't be easy at all, even to think about it. Not a kind of cozy intimacy, but actually like an intimacy that's really scary, where the question really feels like we're on the line. Now, not that this has to reserve itself to places like Zen halls. I encountered this idea of a less cozy kind of intimacy just the other night, rewatching a 1985 rom-com called Into the Night. Does this ring bells for anyone? Jeff Goldblum and Michelle Pfeiffer. No one, no one. I heartily recommend this rom-com, 1985. It's got some unfortunate treatments of the bad guys who are Persian. It's kind of reminiscent of, I'm digressing a bit, but forgive me, kind of reminiscent of like the Libyans in Back to the Future, where the bad guys are both otherized and then also made comic. It's quite unfortunate. But other than that, Into the Night is a very lovely little romantic comedy. In it, you just a little digression here, but it's, I think, to the point. Jeff Goldblum, we were introduced to him. He's completely sleepless. He's been having insomnia every night, and he doesn't know why. And he realizes that his wife is cheating on him, and he leaves into the night, ends up running into Michelle Pfeiffer. Hijinks ensue, bad guys ensue, right? He's still sleepless. There's this one moment, climactic moment, where one of the bad guys is holding a gun to Michelle Pfeiffer's head, and Jeff Goldblum just completely right out there. Cloud is his shift. He goes up to the bad guy as everybody's completely flipping out. Sweat pouring down everybody's brow, including the bad guy's brow, who's holding Michelle Pfeiffer hostage. And Jeff Goldblum just goes up to the bad guy and says, "What's wrong with my life? Why can't I sleep? Why is my wife cheating on me?" Now, I mean, it's a romantic comedy, but it's that quality of question, maybe minus Michelle Pfeiffer, bad guy, sweat pouring down the brow. But it's that quality of question, of having, on the one hand, nothing left to lose, but truly having everything completely exposed. Right? The question is not cozy. So, I come by this thinking about questions quite sort of honestly, I think, if I want to put it that way. They're very big in Judaism and Jewish culture. I'm Jewish. There's this old joke. A young man goes to see his rabbi and he says, "Why do Jews always answer questions with a question?" And the rabbi says, "You think I should give you an answer?" In fact, the Jewish holiday of Passover, which we're coming right to the end of, it was just Monday night was Erev Passover, first night of Seder. Really important holiday commemorating the Exodus from Egypt, Jews being freed from slavery. We celebrate that. At the heart of that ritual are questions, particularly the 4 questions that get asked by the youngest person in the home. This is a ritual that happens at home. The Seder happens at home. That's actually really important. And questions drive the whole thing. The heart of a Passover Seder is retelling the story of when, in the language that's commanded from the Bible, telling the story of when your forefathers, when I was freed from Egypt, right? When the Lord freed us from the Almighty, freed us from Egypt. And you're commanded to tell the story to your children. And the way that happens in a Passover Seder is the children ask questions. I know this well. I was the youngest in my family, so, tender age of 4, I'm trying to memorize the 4 questions to ask. And the 4 questions is very meta. It's actually quite like the Lotus Sutra, because the 4 questions that you ask are the questions of, why are we doing this ritual tonight? So you are in the ritual asking the question of, why is this ritual happening? Very Lotus Sutra, which is such a central text in our tradition, where the whole sutra is about the Buddha saying, "I'm going to teach you the Lotus Sutra." Very, very meta. Very much the quality of a questioning mind. Here's the thing, with this ritual in Passover, and this heart of questions. And what I'm struck about as I'm speaking with you today is my karma, Zen Buddhist, Jew, here I am. The centrality of questions in both of those traditions. So this thing about the Passover Seder, the Seder emerges in the context of the destruction of the temple in 70 AD being destroyed by the Romans. So the temple, if you think about a temple, right, we're sitting here in a temple, the way a temple centers practice, and the temple in Judaism being the place where the tabernacle holds the Word of God. So that's destroyed, and Judaism becomes a religion of exile, a religion of carrying the practice in the home. So this idea of in this body, in this heart, in this home, we have to keep the story going. We have to carry the practice forward. That's at the core of question, that something, that it's in this flesh and bone that the truth resides. There's no place I can go to get it that's separate from this flesh, this bone. Does this make sense? Does the connections to Passover? And there's no other place. So I'm going to have to ask the questions, because the questions are what bring forward that truth that resides face to face in each person. There's no other way to get it. It's in you, it's in me, it's in each of us. The questions will have to be asked. I don't know why they have to be asked by the youngest person at the Passover Seder, except there is something here about the fact that truth, if it's in this body, is carried in a human life that begins and ends, that is carried through the stream of time. Another way I think to say all of this is that questions are necessary to call forth answers. It's very important to remember in this respect that that sixth ancestor, Huineng, that I mentioned at the very beginning of this Dharma talk in terms of the Platform Sutra and this story that gives rise to the question, what is this? Huineng, the sixth ancestor, is also the sixth ancestor who wrote the famous poem that we've talked about a couple weeks in a row here, just recently, the famous poem about mirrors. So there's a story, I won't go into the story right now, but at the very beginning of Huineng's journey, we know him as Daikan Eno in our lineage. That's the name we recite. So the sixth ancestor, before he became the sixth ancestor wrote this famous 4-line poem, this gatha. Saying that the middle lines of it, this mirror doesn't have a stand, our Buddha nature is forever pure. Where do you get this dust? Comparing our mind to a mirror. And that's the thing, that we are the kinds of beings that we are, the kind of place that we inhabit, this life that we inhabit, is a world of infinite reflecting and responding. To say that this mind is a mirror is to recognize the ways in which the questions that I hold are already answers to the questions out there. The questions that I ask are reflections of the answers that are out there, and there's no way to get down deeper than that exchange of question and answer. It's mirrors all the way down, if that makes any sense. There's a image of this meeting that's not the cozy intimacy of just open to the world, but the much more uncomfortable, naked intimacy of this mirroring, questioning, responding of a human life, of life. There's an image of this in the Shastra that we chant a couple times a week, the Precious Mirror Samadhi. This image of arrows meeting head on. So the line is, with a great archer's skill, one can hit the mark at 100 yards. Like, that's a pretty good question. I can hit the mark at 100 yards. But arrows meeting head on, how could that be a matter of skill? True questions aren't aimed out there to hit the mark. True questions are arrowheads meeting their answer head on. That's why they're so uncomfortable, because if you can imagine arrows meeting each other head on, the arrows don't neatly survive that encounter, do they? Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced being met like that, but I imagine that you have. I imagine that we all have these moments of a not so cozy intimacy with the world where it's like, have you ever experienced that? I remember one sanzen, so sanzen is that one-to-one meeting with a teacher. I remember one sanzen years ago with Hojo-san where I was just like, how do you do it? I said something like goofy like that. How do you do it? Sometimes, it's always great when you say things, but sometimes you just go, what is that? He said, the dharma. It's like, in a couple weeks' time, we will have an opportunity to have that arrows meeting head on with Hojo-san in a ceremony called Shosan. So that's the 19th, I think, of May? 12th. 12th, thanks. Next week, the 5th of May, there we go, I can do arithmetic, we'll have a different but quite similar kind of celebration called hossenshiki, right? Where we're going to aim the arrow of our questions for our head student to bring forth her heart, right? Like to really meet her and to give her opportunities to really meet us for true questions, which are always the mirror reflection of true answers, can be asked. So I deeply encourage you next Sunday to come here and to just bring it all so that we honor what Jiki-e's been doing for us this term as head student. So I think as we're coming to the end of our time today, I think I want to just share one last thing. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't think questions are what we often take them to be. I don't think the questioning heart is simply opening to the world. I think it's less warm and fuzzy than that. I think it's more risky than that. I think it puts ourselves on the line more than that may sometimes seem to do. And I want to just say one more thing about Passover and being Jewish, to bring myself fully here. So Passover is very big on the number 4. There are 4 questions, there are 4 glasses of wine, and there's a story about the 4 children. And it sort of goes along with the 4 questions. So the story that's recounted is that there are 4 children, and those 4 children are the ones who ask questions, who ask the questions that elicit this story of Exodus, the story of Passover. So there's the wise child. The wise child's like, okay, I've done all my research. Tell me everything. Come on, tell me all the stuff, because I really want to know even more about the laws, the rituals. Tell it to me. Tell it all. And in response to the wise child, you say, here's all of the information you need about this ritual. And then there's the simple child. The simple child's very, very zen, because the simple child just says, what is this? And then you tell the simple child, well, this is what the Almighty did for me, for all of us in Egypt. And then there's the child who can't even ask a question, doesn't even have words. And then you just say, okay, here, we're going to do it this way. But there's the wicked child. The wicked child says, what is the meaning of this celebration for you? And the traditional teaching is that you say to the wicked child, this is what the Almighty did for me and not for you, because you're excluding yourself. So I'm the wicked child, right now. We live in a time when it's really hard to know, to relate to, as a Jew, to relate to the karma of being Jewish. And so the questions I ask of my heart, of my world, are questions that bring that all to the line. The Passover Seder ends with the wish, next year in Jerusalem. Those are very weighted words to say in today's world. And so this is my karma. And I think I want to share that with you just to say that in a certain sense we all need to be a little bit wicked and pointed with the way we meet the world right now, not by excluding ourselves, but by asking the questions that really bring our karma to the fore and that really put ourselves out there with nothing to hide. And I hope that makes sense. It's a little compressed. And that's what I have for you today. There are a few minutes still for questions or comments. Yeah.
How do we find our question or let it arise in us?
Oh, so you think I should give you an answer? No, I mean, I think, I guess what I've been coming to think these days is that a true question is really desperate for an answer. You know, so for me right now, I'm like, how do I be a Jew? Like, that is a very, very, very deep question. It feels really scary. I can't tell you how many times I wondered if I was going to talk about Passover today with you. Like, should I? Can I? What would that? Why is it scary? So I don't know. I don't know if that helps at all. But a question needs to really want an answer. Yeah. We meet the world fully by that raw edge of our heart just being out there. And that's scary. I mean, it doesn't have to be scary. You can also just ask a question that's like, this is a good enough question. I've asked many of those in this hall over the years. So I think I would balance what I just said by saying, don't talk yourself out of a question, you know, by thinking, this isn't raw enough. Bring what there is to bring.
Myobun?
Yeah.
Myobun? Could you talk about the difference between an answer to a question and a response to a question?
Yeah. So I think Hojo-san would say something different from me. I think Hojo-san would say one of the reasons when there's a Dharma talk where it's just an open question, we call it questions and response rather than questions and answers. And I think he would say, he's not here, so he can't correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he would say, you know, response comes from that kind of mirroring. An answer seems like, here's the key, we're done. I'm kind of leaning toward the language of answer because I think answer does sound definite, right? And I think a question, we want the answer. And that desire that we get, like the thing that puts our heart at rest, we call that answer. I want an answer. Mm-hmm. It doesn't quite have the same force. I want a response. No, I want an answer. So if we can hold that sense of urgency without imagining that the universe is going to give us the right or wrong, yes or no, that's going to like close it all down for all time, that's how I understand the word answer. And I think we can call it response, but that just sounds a little bit soft to me. I don't know if that makes sense.
I'm just sort of thinking about the spaciousness around response where
Yeah.
it may lead to the next question or the deeper question, you know, or the,
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like maybe there's no end to the questions.
So thank you for saying that. So it might be that when I say answer is the word I'm looking for today, it's because I'm thinking about this from the standpoint of the questioner and for that desire to really be met. Like, I want an answer. From the standpoint of the person receiving the question, I want to respond. But when my heart's ripping open and I'm like, what? I want an answer. I don't just want a response. I want something that feels like it won't shut things down because I'm alive and the universe is in motion. But that's what I want. And I think a question brings forward that urgency. Does that respond?
I think so.
Myobun?
Yeah.
I'm curious how you would talk about approaching a question where the question is, should I do this? Like, should I do this action? And that's your big question. Because in that way, it's like, can you find an answer, or
Yeah.
are you creating the answer? It's so hard.
Yeah. So, whenever I'm grappling with questions like should I, I'm always curious what's the question underneath the question. Sometimes that formulation, I think, is like the layer on top. It's like, well, what am I really wondering here? You know, is there a way to get to the question underneath that? Does that?
I have a question that's not so much about questions, but it was kind of a morsel that you alluded to in your talk regarding your family and the idea of letting go of the narratives that people grasp onto so strongly. I guess my question is, how could you pose there being a benefit in letting go of the narrative, like helping people buy into that idea of like, why don't you try letting all that stuff go so we can just meet each other where we're at now? I don't.
How can you?
I'm sorry.
I think I missed the verb. You said, how can you?
How could we just meet each other where we're at now and let go of that old narrative?
Like, how do you do that?
How could you help them buy into the idea of doing that?
Yeah. Is it, yeah, that's a
the
great.
That's the narrative.
What?
I just said that's the narrative.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, you know, what's often, I can just speak from where I am with this, what's often so hard about that is someone has to let go first, you know? So if I want my sister and my brother to let go of their narratives of me and of each other, I have to let go. And you know, and there are no freaking guarantees at all. And to let go of the narrative and not then want them to ratify my petition for the letting go of narratives so that we can all like let go of narratives together so that none of us really have to risk too much. I think I just have to go there.
Well, that answer definitely resonates with me because I was thinking of presenting the concept of not forgiving and forgetting, but forgiving and letting go. Everybody's going to remember what was said and done or not done, the whole narrative, but we can let go of it, basically. So.
And can we let go of the sense of who you are and you are and you are, that those events happened? Can I allow you to be someone other than I think you are? can I allow myself to be someone other than who I think I am? Yeah, maybe one last question. Tenshin?
Could you remind me your name, please?
Myobun.
Myobun?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So in your talk today, the topic seems to me is, like learning to live the question, knowing what your question is and to live the question. And I'm just thinking back the poem that you read to us in the beginning. I'm curious what made you choose that poem and what does that poem have to do with this topic?
Yeah. So the poem is really the poem of who am I if I'm not all the things that I think I am and all the embodiment that I know myself to be. And I think that the questions that really cut to the quick are the questions that risk me not being able to hold on to all the things that I think I am. So the speaker in that poem is asking the question of who am I when my body's not here? And I think every question that cuts to the quick is really facing that. Who am I? What am I? What is life if it is not everything I think it is, even though it's making me miserable right now, potentially? Where am I? I think questions leave us homeless in a very powerful way.
How can we become more intimate with the apprehension of asking a question?
You mean, are you asking how can we work with the fear about asking a question?
Yes.
That's a good question. I mean, to me, the fear, it's like me talking about being Jewish and Passover and, alluding to Israel and Gaza in this hall. It's like, I don't want to do it. It's scary. Oh. The scariness that's our practice. Our practice is like, we talked about fearlessness in the Heart Sutra, It's like we're trying to be with how afraid we are all the time. So it's messy. It's not going to be pretty. And my fearlessness isn't because I'm free from fear. My fearlessness is because I'm like, there it is, yeah, And I'm just living with it as much as I can, moment by moment. So, asking a question is not a special kind of fear, it's just the fear.